They are already super rich people who can afford to sustain even cities built on the name of the university as well. So I would say if you can definitely afford to sustain a city that has the same name as a university, I would say that you also can afford to cut down the fees that the students paid.
In March of 2020, it was declared that the entire country of Malaysia would go on lockdown under the Movement Control Order, implementing strict SOPs and rules that would alter the way of life for Malaysians. And what impacted students the most was the shift from physical education to online education. So we've collaborated with the people from MYER Movement to spark a dialogue about the state of education during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm the founder of Perspectives.
Hello, I'm Alyssa. I'm the founder of Perspectives.
Hi, I'm Izanna. I'm the co-founder and executive director of MYER Movement.
Hi, I'm Kah Vern. I'm the founder of Hands for Education and the community engagement officer at MYER Movement.
Welcome to Crossing Perspectives.
Students did not learn effectively from online classes.
I agree.
I feel neutral about it. I agree.
I agree.
Honestly, as an STPM student myself, I felt demotivated to study. I did not really pay attention in class. I was absent for most of the time. One is because I was doing my work, but I wouldn't want to take that as an excuse. But the other thing was basically because I was too lazy to get up and go to my computer, and my bed was just right behind me. But the thing is, you can learn effectively from having online classes. But it's just that the teachers have to teach properly. Like example for maths, right? It's much preferred if you can like maybe use the whiteboard. Use whiteboard and then teacher can just send out like questions for students to do. And then the students will do, and then teachers will just write on the whiteboard, and teacher will, and everyone will check. So that's basically a good way to do maths. But during online classes, because most of the teachers, they were not in a way prepared for this kind of situations. Did not think of that, and so on. So in the end, there were teachers who used the right way to teach during online classes, but there were teachers who did not.
Okay, I would agree with the fact that students do not learn effectively from online classes because I feel like online classes disproportionately affect especially B40 students who may not have the necessary gadgets to participate in online classes. But two is also this also affects people from rural areas who may not have internet connection as well. So I would say it's fairly obvious that they're affected badly from it. Third, even if you are from like an urban area and you do have access to gadgets and you do have all the necessary tools you need to participate in online classes, I still feel like it's entirely like subjective to you whether you want to participate in the online class, or secondly, if you can even absorb the information yourself.
So I feel neutral about the statement, because as much as I want to agree completely, to a certain extent I cannot, because I do know a lot of people who can study effectively during the pandemic, during online classes and stuff. Because initially what I went through was the first few weeks of like online classes and stuff, I was still okay because I had my own timetable. I wanted to be as productive as possible. I want to start over. I wanted to have like a proper timetable where I'm like, okay, this one's study time, and then now I focus on the organization and everything like that. But after like towards the end, I became lazier and lazier, and that's on me. But I still know so many people who are trying so hard to study. I've met up with like a bunch of friends, and they're like, oh yeah, it's actually, I do prefer this one, because they prefer just having the class like right in front of them. And but yeah, I think that's the reason why I want to say that it's neutral, because there are people also that can study and prefer online classes.
But because right now we are talking about SPM, STPM students. But how about like foundation and diploma students? How was online class for, especially you going to INTI? How was it for you?
Okay, the thing is, it's different from me. I used to take STPM, and that time it was initially, like I said, it was much easier because I had my own timetable. I wanted to start over and just be ready for the exam. I ended up failing towards the end. But right now for INTI, now that we're back to physical classes, some of us, I would say that for my course specifically, I get to go to campus and explore and everything because I need to be there. But I do understand that some people are still stuck at home. People who are taking mass communication and everything like that. But those things, it's all on the computer. As much as, of course, it's easier for us to go online. For us to go to the campus itself because you need someone to teach you and be there to guide you through it.
Like when you talked about losing motivation to study and all that, I actually don't think it's a personal fault. I think it's an issue with the way that online classes are being conducted. That's because firstly, they're not interactive. In a sense that you do not see your friends, you don't have time to like spend your break and lunch with them, don't have extracurricular activities, you do not have practical activities like going to the science lab. So I believe that all of this does play a part because when you are literally just having these Zoom calls and you're just listening to someone talk for hours, what should have been an interactive class where you can ask questions and you can talk to your friends and you can have discussions, it becomes like a lecture. And lectures are honestly very boring. I could never sit through a lecture. So I do not think it's a personal issue. I think it's honestly the situation that people have been put. I will never blame teachers and schools specifically because they have also been facing many challenges. Many teachers have been having a very steep learning curve when it comes to doing online classes because the reality is some teachers I know are like 70 years old. They don't even know how to use a laptop and you expect them to use Zoom. Like it's impossible and it's so hard for them to transition. So I think the challenges that we've been facing this pandemic is not our fault, it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the school's fault. If anything, it's this pandemic's fault and poor execution.
Everyone was not financially prepared for online classes.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
So it came to a point at the end of basically the lockdown, like close to the end, where we were close to having our physical classes back again, where the teachers had to time their classes perfectly. So they had to ask students, oh, do you have enough data to go to this class, and so on. So it was that bad lah.
I mean, of course, B40 is something to, it's so expensive to buy like all these gadgets, like phones, laptops, anything like that. But we also have to think about the fact that people in the city, they also go through this. And of course, B40s go through it too. So I think that when we go through it, we have to understand that so many people are going through it together, even the teachers. I have an uncle who put in so much effort and put in so much money into just to make his classes like more interesting and everything.
Is it fair to have students pay the full tuition fees during the pandemic?
I disagree.
I also disagree.
I disagree as well.
I also disagree.
I have friends who actually did their foundation, through online. Everything, online. Your foundation, boom, online. So they did not go to campus at all. And now some of them are doing their degree. So I feel like you paying like 20k and then plus all the other fees is quite a waste of money because it's basically just like burn. So no one saw it coming, and then like I guess in a way the college just wanted to make it easier. They wanted the students to just pay everything. But again, I still think it's not fair, and I still think that they should have plan it through and think of a better plan. But again, it's not up to, we can't really blame anyone in this kind of situation. We can only blame the pandemic itself. Yeah.
Is it okay if I interject? Yeah, sure. Okay, so in this one issue about your tuition fees being charged in full, I do think we can blame the colleges and universities. I do think that they are accountable for this. Because the fact is, no one saw the pandemic coming. Parents, like many employees, were laid off, and to expect for these students and for their parents to still pay full fees, people had to take loans, people had to sell their assets, people had to do all kinds of things, and students are starting to work part-time as well. You should at least cut out all the things that are not being utilized. Why are you paying for a library that you can't use? Why are you paying lab fees when you're not going to the lab? Put it very plainly, it's essentially daylight robbery. Because if you are paying for something that you're not getting, you are essentially being scammed. Some of them did cut all of these unnecessary fees to lessen the burden of students. Maybe you might not be able to cut it completely, but at least reduce it. Show that you are sincere, show that you understand and empathize with your students. That's the least that I expect from major conglomerates and major universities who have a lot of funds.
May I also add on that universities, more often than not, they're started by big companies. I'm not going to name the company that started the university, but I would say that they are already super rich people who can afford to sustain even cities built on the name of the university as well. So I would say if you can afford, if you can definitely afford to sustain a city that has the same name as a university, I would say that you also can afford to cut down the fees that the students pay, because I would say it's completely unethical for a big company to just rob off students when they're not getting full access. The only thing that online students are actually paying for is what Google Suite that they use, like the Google Meets for, probably PDFs that the teachers send to them online for like reading purposes and learning purposes. I would say that's pretty much it. You're not actually paying for the physical facilities, which I think is where most of the which is where most of the large portion of fees is for, right?
The pandemic affected the mental health of the students.
I agree.
I also agree.
I agree as well.
I strongly agree. I think one of my juniors who took SPM 2020 said, I asked her about how are you ready for this subject, and she said, oh, my subject teacher told me this. If you're not prepared and if you don't do well, you only have yourself to blame. And when she said that, I felt really hurt, and I felt like it was something very, very wrong to say to a student, because the fact is we can blame so many things. We can blame the pandemic, we can blame a situations, mental health, and not even blame. These are reasons why you could not perform, and to say you only have yourself to blame. Like, that is something that should not ever come out from an authoritative figure, whether it's your parents or teachers. That is downright guilt tripping your students.
Yeah, I would like to add on. Like, I agree with that. Like, going back for like physical classes, I felt like the only person that I could blame was myself, because it was my fault that I did not listen. And then again, like, that creates like pressure, for myself. Because I was just blaming myself for not listening in class and so on. And I would have appreciated more if everyone around me could be more supportive towards everything. And that mindset where we criticize, where we judge our friends, our family members, people around us for not achieving what we are expected to achieve. We have this thing, it's basically like we have this thing around the world about when, let's talk about Malaysia first. We have this thing where like since we were little, our education system has been quite messed up in a way, like where if example Alyssa here, right, I know my ABCs, but Alyssa, she doesn't know her ABCs. So then I judge her for that, I criticize her for that, instead of actually teaching her, helping her, and that's what we do, that's what we have in our society.
I also think that an issue that we need to highlight in terms of how the pandemic affects students' mental health is also the fact that some students came from households which were, I would say, of unsatisfactory levels. So probably they were abusive, or maybe the household that they came from was not very understanding of them. So in a way, going to physical classes for them pre-pandemic was a way to escape from I would say being unhappy at home, or being abused at home in certain cases, right? So when the online classes started and the pandemic happened and they had to do online classes from home, I would say that their mental health became a lot worse, because there was no way for them to escape. They would have to see the family. They would have to stay in a household full of people that did not make them feel safe, did not make them feel comfortable, or did not provide them support. So I would say that is one aspect. But I would also say the second aspect is the fact that some teachers, not only do they not try to connect with the students when they teach online, I think they don't really understand fully what the students are going through. I would say this also goes both ways, because sometimes you can't really understand what the teachers are going through.
I actually agree with Izanna when she said that it goes both ways, because we do not know what happens like at the teacher's house and stuff, because like they are stressed out at home with the children making so much noise, and they have them having
That's
to
true.
teach the students at the same time. Some teachers, they're actually trying to put in effort. When going back to school and stuff, it's very difficult for them to get the same motivation that they used to have and to continue teaching the students the same way.
Alright. Okay, for me, I think I would sum up this question in one word: uncertainty. So this pandemic has created uncertainty for a lot of people, but particularly students. They don't know when they're going back to school. They don't know when their exams are going to happen. They don't know if they are even going to graduate on time. Like, this uncertainty itself creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, both for adults and if more for children, because we're not built strong enough, we've not have enough life experience to teach us to go through all of this. Keep in mind that a lot of people who are still in school are also taking care of their adik-beradik. They're also taking care of their, oh my god, I forgot a word for siblings. They're taking care of siblings. They're taking care of like maybe their parents who are sick, and they have so many challenges and we don't take any of this into account. And that's when people say things like, if your classmates can do it, why can't you? That is not acceptable because everyone is going through something different. But particularly counselors, this one doesn't really have much to do with education, but it very much has to do with students and schools. For many students, the only types of mental health professionals they have access to, due to financial and also due to the stigma we have around mental health, is the school counselors. And during a pandemic, how do you talk to your school counselor? Via email? Like what? And this is where I actually got quite disappointed with my former school. I will not name them. But the first issue I had was they claim to provide mental and emotional support to all the students. But the problem is that school has about 1,200 students and they only have one counselor. And when I asked my juniors and I said, do you guys feel okay? And I actually did a study with a few of alumni and current students, and the results were very, very, very alarming. About 80 to 90% of them have once contemplated suicide. On top of that, almost unanimously, they said that they have not received support emotionally or mentally. All of these things are very concerning, and the fact is that if schools want to paint themselves as caring for their students, they would do more. They would educate their teachers and say, lessen their workload, give them like more breaks, and do all of these things, check up on students, whatnot. If, for example, when your student doesn't come for class, the common response is, why didn't you come, and not what are you facing? In fact, I will say this on, whether you want to cut this out, it's up to you lah. But my school actually blocked me because I raised two issues. I raised two issues publicly on social media, and they silenced me by, number one, disabling comments, and number two, they blocked me from all their social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram. What did I raise? When they claimed to provide mental and emotional support, I asked my juniors and I was like, it is not true, and I just said this is not what I heard from my juniors. And that comment got so many likes. And the thing is, I agree that confrontation is not the only resolve to this, so I emailed the school and I gave them a ton of suggestions. Hire more counselors, implement eye breaks, train your teachers on mental health. All of these things, and this is what they told me. Why don't you give us a proposal? And I'm like, that is not my job. And I even approached one of the senior staff, the deputy principal, and I said, I'm very concerned for your students' mental health. You need to educate your teachers. You need to educate your students on how to seek help and how to cope with stress. And this is what I got. They said, let the professionals do their job. And I was like, yeah, you are professional, but you are not doing your job. And they said, we have a counselor. And I'm like, one counselor for the entire school, and this counselor does not even have a good reputation, is not enough. And we cannot continue to allow schools, education institutions, universities to sweep these issues under the rug, because it is not their lives at stake. It's the lives of students at stake. It's their mental health at stake.
Online learning is the future of education.
I'm neutral about this.
Yeah, I also feel neutral about this.
I agree.
I agree.
I do think that online learning is something that's essential for people to have. I wouldn't expect this to happen in rural areas, but I would say that's entirely up to the government on whether on like when they're going to put in internet access and make it available in rural areas. But I do feel like being able to use Google Docs, Google Sheets, those are like, Google Sheets is something like only I found out how to use properly because of online classes as well. So I think it's really important, because I would say in your future, in your future work, right, students who want to get jobs, a lot of the jobs require you to be able to know how to use Microsoft Word, to be able to know how to use PowerPoint slides as well. So I would say that's a really important skill.
Okay. You know what, I feel, okay, the reason why I feel neutral about this thing, because I do agree with you guys. I do agree that if the rural area, they do get access to, they do get the Wi-Fi that they need, the gadgets that they need, I think that it'll be easier for them. And I do agree with you also when you said that we need to prepare for the pandemic in the future. But the reason why I think it's neutral, because like you also need physical classes, because like you said that some people, we should have online classes for the people who actually prefer having online classes, but at the same time we still need physical classes, because you can't stay motivated just having online classes. You need to meet up with your friends, you need to meet the lecturers in person just to continue getting the same motivation. Because personally what I go through is that I have both online classes and physical classes, and I look forward to both, because sometimes I need a break at home, sometimes I want to go to campus just to feel more motivated to do all these things. And I think a few things you actually need to go to campus for a few things. Let's say for fashion, you need to go there and learn how to sew and everything. You can't do all those things online. So I think it's important for a few courses to have both physical and both physical and online classes. I think that they can take turns. When it comes to online learning, I think that it'll be easier for everyone in the future, because we are slowly adapting to the change. The fact that we need to go online to have all these classes, I think we are slowly accepting this. We are slowly being able to be more independent, because like you said before, like if you have online classes, it's all on you. If you stay awake, it's for yourself. If you get the notes right, if you can score everything, it's on you. Whatever happens is on you, even including your mental health. But I think you also need physical classes because you can't stay motivated by just having online classes.
I think I agree that physical classes like fashion, like practical classes are definitely, you can't replicate that online. That is why that I think my friend is one of the few people going to university because she's studying medicine. Like how are you going to do things like procedures and lab experiments online? It's not possible. But I think even with the concept of online learning, practicals still can take place, meaning physical practicals. But I think for courses that are very theoretical, a fully online course is actually fully possible. When it comes to mathematics, for example.
It's actually possible, but at the same time, I feel like if you want to, because sometimes some students, they can feel a bit lazy when they're at home. Some people, they actually prefer going to campus. I have a few friends, even when they have online classes, they prefer going to campus because they feel like they can stay awake. They get that motivation to work hard for it. So I think that both is needed for you to stay motivated throughout the whole thing.
I feel like I would like to add on. I feel like to start is that public schools from primary school students, allowing them to bring their gadgets to school should be okay. And why do I think so? Most people disagree with this because we see gadgets as a form of distraction. But it is only a form of distraction because the student themselves are not interested in whatever the teachers are teaching them. But they are more interested in the things that they are doing online, like their own research. I believe that I learned history more, using Google than from textbooks. All these things. Because why? Because I find all these things interesting. Yeah. And when you have those gadgets, you have the freedom. You have the freedom to learn whatever you want, and that is the education that we want. That is education. It's not something that you force people to take. Education is everywhere. It's everything you see. What is that? That's a cup and stuff. And why? Because us humans, we are very curious. We want to know everything and stuff. So all these things once we need to take, of course, one step at a time. But one good step that we can take is by allowing students to bring gadgets and actually promoting gadgets to them, because it's quite sad. And even in high school, when they had to transition between physical to online class, there were students who did not even know how to use Google Meet, Zoom, and so on. So to have these kind of problems, that shows that the students that we have, they don't even know how to use gadgets. Yeah.
I think the perception is that academics is very dry, that it can be fun. That's because we made it that way. Education and gaining knowledge can actually be a very fun thing when it's done casually. Honestly, I learned more English from watching TV shows on Disney Channel than going to school. Yeah. I think we can all agree that the standard of English education in our schools are actually quite low compared to the global standard. Yeah. On top of that, I think gamified learning is very, very important. I think tools like Kahoot are amazing. I just had a class that day that I did, and I used Kahoot, and it was so interactive. Felt it was even more interactive than an in-person class because everyone was participating and everyone was forced to participate. And I think this form of personalized and gamified learning should be pushed very much. Yeah, I think what you said about giving students the ability to bring gadgets to school has very much to do with trusting them, giving them responsibility and teaching them how to responsibly use technology. Because I agree, social media can be so distracting, but social media can also be so powerful. The internet can be such a distraction. Like you can just go on and just like search, watch a TV show. But at the same time, you can read a research paper on Google. So it's about encouraging students and normalizing them using technology to learn rather than as a form of leisure, because we separate it very much in a sense that education is academics and it's books, and everything else that's on the internet, like your TV shows, your games, are all fun. When in reality, games actually play a very big part in training people's like agile skills. Like I'm not agile at all. That's because I don't play games. So I think integrating these two aspects of our lives and creating holistic education as a whole is very, very important.
And that's a wrap.
Nice one.
That was such a mouthful. Hello, I'm Adam.
And I'm Alyssa, and we are the founders of an organization called Perspectives.
Perspectives is a youth-led organization that will be uncovering different aspects of pressing topics one day at a time.
The smallest efforts for change will create a ripple effect on our society to better understand each other.
Follow us on our social media accounts and join us on this journey to fully understand the society that we live in.